Tiffany.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet
well,
you too.
in person.
Again.
We've met in passing here a few days ago in Phoenix, and you're part of the Astro community. And we've met many times on the calls and had lots of really fun conversations together. And of course, you stood out to me because you sent me this incredible book that you wrote. And so I want to introduce people to you and get an understanding about what you've got going on in your world, because I know you're a coach as well. But in addition to that, you have aspirations for a real estate investment portfolio and career as well. And so I want to dive into that a little bit. But if you could, for those who don't know you, introduce yourself and tell us more about what's going on in your world.
Sure. Well, my name is Tiffany Grimm Fulton, and I currently reside in Denver, Colorado. Been there for about 6 years, actually. We came from Phoenix here to Denver and have a husband and a 7-year-old son. So
Fun.
That keeps me plenty busy. I did leave my corporate career last year, and since then have been building my own business on the side. I've always had some sort of entrepreneurial spirit, and coaching and learning and development and helping people and supporting people along their path of growth has always been something that has never not been in my territory.
Sure.
And so even as I was working in corporate, I was leading retreats for mothers in Colorado and putting together whatever events I could figure out to kind of feed that part of my soul. And so now it's full-time, developing mentorships, one-to-one mentorships and leadership programs, and running quests and planning an adventure quest.
Yeah, I noticed you're doing something in Switzerland, I believe.
Yeah.
I really want to go to Switzerland, so there is a possibility that I may join you. The only thing about it is that I think you might be hiking in really high mountains. That might be a deal breaker for me, because a mountain tried to kill me once, and I'll get into that, story
we
a
need
little
to hear
later.
That story. Maybe we need to reframe the story a little bit.
It was a murder. It tried to murder me. No, it wasn't. It was definitely me.
Yeah.
But what was your full-time job in corporate? What was that?
So I worked for an organization that was primarily focused on human performance and high-level performance. So we had facilities where we trained elite athletes and then applied that methodology to corporate wellness. So I was responsible kind of in the innovation team around mindset and recovery, because we had 4 pillars: mindset, nutrition, movement, recovery. We'd use all of those to go in and provide wellness programs and performance programs for like Fortune 100 companies.
Wow.
And kind of help their leadership teams or help their members feel good when they're at work.
Pretty incredible. So that's you then come from a place of really understanding how the brain and how we think is truly connected to how we experience the world and our success within it, right? And so that must have been an interesting thing for you to find your way into. That's probably how we aligned, because at some level, I do so much of that work by myself, not realizing or knowing how much I can weave it into the real estate work that I do and the Astroflipping community in and of itself. But I always feel like they're so interconnected that you can't really have one without the other. And so you leave corporate America, you are developing your own coaching platforms, you're helping other coaches as well. And that led you to me. So what excites you, or what brings you to the world of real estate investing, and why real estate?
Well, first it was a sit down with myself of how do I want to provide a future for my son and make sure that he's well taken care of, and do it in different ways. Certainly my parents have been amazing in making sure that that's set up for me, but real estate was never a part of that. And it was always kind of this thing that lived over here. So real estate had always just kind of been this risky place that was untouchable. And
was there a trauma or something that happened?
No, not necessarily. It was just, I think in my lineage and my parents never really understood that it could, that we could exist within it, and that we could find potential in it. And so,
did mom and dad own a home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we own our homes. Actually built my childhood home, which was an incredible place to live, and then they moved and owned their own home. So there was certainly ownership there, but to go outside of that wasn't really a part of what they learned or what I learned. And so, and just looking at longevity for my son and future generations to come, it was like property is going to be a huge part of that, or it needs to be. And I just had to get over the hump that I couldn't learn it, or that I couldn't start at, in my mid 40s and be able to, entertain something completely new. But then it also offered a different way for my brain to tune in and to act in a different way than what I've been doing for so long, is building a business and being an entrepreneur and coaching, which is what I know. But for me, it was like, let's do it and let's learn something new. And so I started going to events in Denver and asking, where do I start? What's the best place to, get into the arena? And wholesaling just kind of kept coming up. So
neat.
That's when I started researching.
And your research led to, I'm sure, a plethora of people to learn from, many of whom I have a tremendous amount of respect for and think are great. There are some out there that are not so. And I think that's in any industry, right? You're going to get a mix of sun and clouds. But the reality is wholesaling is absolutely a great entry-level positioning to get involved in real estate. Yeah. The part about it that I think it's limited in is that, for me, I started wholesaling in 2002. It's 2024, right? And so I've been doing it a long time. Yeah. And it was great as a way to create money and to bring like cash flow into your ecosystem. Yeah. But because you're selling everything that you're putting your hands on, it didn't provide a path to a lot of ownership for myself. And so I didn't necessarily build this huge portfolio of real estate that I kind of regret at this point now, because how many homes I've wholesaled over 7,000 properties. If I look at the values of all those properties over time, at this point right now, if I'd held all of them, my net worth would be, $500 million, right? And that is upsetting to me, but also, I needed to wholesale to build myself out of debt, to create the life that I have, and to be able to have paid for all the things that I've been able to do and my lifestyle up to this point. Yep, right. But again, it's a great way to create cash and to generate, initial money. Right. So I think you were definitely pointed in the right direction, with wholesaling being a great place to start so that you can gain capital. Another thing that I've learned from our interactions is that you have a desire to use real estate as a way to make some social impact and to be an agent of change and to provide opportunities to a broader and greater community. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, when you first start off thinking, or when I first started off thinking of it, it was certainly generational wealth. It was certainly having the freedom to choose more, within our family, be able to travel, and, money leads to greater opportunities for sure. And then as I got more into it, I had to keep asking myself, okay, where's the alignment with my values, right? With who I am as a person and what I'm doing in the world and how I want to help people transform and hold space for people's experiences. So what does that look like in the real estate world? And, and how do I at least merge the foundations of those, or those have the same foundation and have different maybe outputs. But so that's when, we had a conversation online too around, okay, this isn't just about me. It's not just about my family. It's not even just about community, it's about like what I'm doing for humanity. Right. And so it was kind of this like thing that just kept stacking, and the result for me and my children, or my child and my family, was kind of at the top. And what was on the base was values alignment and how I can serve in a bigger way in communities and do this in a way that feels really good for my heart every day. And then I'm going into communities, and those two words, right, restoration and preservation, just kind of kept showing up. So how do I come into this space and make a difference, and also, it be profit-driven or purpose-driven profit, right? Yeah. And have some meaning behind it. So that was kind of the thought process. So here we are.
An interesting thing that I've had to come to terms with in, the career that I've had is, it's cool that I've wholesaled 7,000 plus homes. On the flip side of that, I've made 7,000 plus homes more expensive. I've made 7,000 plus homes less attainable. I've been a part of 7,000 plus families, some of whom they had to leave their neighborhood, or they were forced to leave their neighborhood just because of expenses. And I am starting to really understand the impact of that, not because I didn't care, but now, as we've seen over the last 5 years in the United States, and it wasn't such a problem before. I've been, again, doing this for 20 plus years, right? And so I didn't really see the social impact of the housing market getting more and more and more and more expensive, and neighborhoods evolving and changing. I've always been of the opinion that gentrification isn't a bad thing, because I grew up in a neighborhood that gentrified, and I'll tell you, when I see what it looks like now versus what it looked like when I grew up there, it's way better now than what it was when I grew up there. And so I've had this idea in my head that, oh, gentrification is progress. Gentrification is making things more beautiful, more accessible, better. But there's a cost. And everything has a cost. And now I'm seeing the cost, and it's impossible to ignore. One of those things is, I've talked about this before, but there's a family that live in a van around the corner from my house. And, I see them when I walk my dog in the morning. And I realize that this is a family of people who have jobs. The man puts a suit on in the morning. I walked the dog earlier than normal one morning, and I actually seen them getting ready. And it was a beautiful scene, but it was sad too, because I could see the love, I could see the support, I could see the family still doing the best they could with the means that they had, which was really beautiful. But I could see the fact that it was terrible that their home was the car, right? So dad would put a suit on, mom was sitting there in the back, kids were hanging out in the trunk, playing, she's, keeping them occupied, he's putting his suit on. And then I started to try to think about, what does their day look like, right? He goes to work, and then she's probably driving around looking for places where she can park the car, go inside, get into the AC, entertain the kids until he's finished work. And she's probably getting kicked out of multiple places a day, right? Like, hey, it's time for you to go, or hey, you bought a coffee in the morning, but it's been 6 hours, you should probably leave. And so this is probably what her reality is. And
constant vigilance.
And a little while ago, Pace and I went to a women's shelter down the road. And I think one of the hardest things for me to really swallow was that when they surveyed the children who were all there, because there's a ton of kids in this shelter, and they asked them all, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my thought would have been they would have had all these different careers, and they would have had all these, a policeman, a fireman, all these things. The number one answer was safe. Because they're not safe. They don't feel safe. They don't have a home. They don't have a place they get to come, and it's not, even just like the vehicle for that family, it's still their safe place at some level, but these kids aren't safe. They don't have a place.
That's right.
And so the next piece that I've really come to terms with is, dealing with my own life circumstance change over the last year, being newly single and really struggling with and coming to terms with loneliness, right? It's just me. And so, I've got my dogs and I enjoy them a lot, but it's sometimes you're just, the echo of your voice in the house is whoa, it's just me. And I started to talk to my therapist about it. And I was like, is this normal? What do you, or am I just emotional or something wrong with me or anything? And she said, no, I think that we're coming into a place in America right now where we're dealing with an epidemic of loneliness.
That's right.
And so, we've got housing costs skyrocketing. We've got inflation that is just, it seems to be uncontrollable. We have more homelessness, or more people unhoused than we've ever had in our country's history. And we have affordability that just doesn't make sense for where wages are. And
we have hyper connectivity and a complete lack of connection.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, because I can text you, can text my friends, but because of that, we're not talking on the phone anymore.
That's right.
I feel connected to you maybe because I comment on your Facebook post, but we used to go out to dinners or have lunches or, meet each other on our birthdays.
Right.
And now we just make a post on someone's wall.
Yeah.
Right? And so the connection is absolutely disintegrating. The connectivity is there, but it's very superficial and it doesn't mean a lot. And so this is the new world we're in, right? And add to that the fact that this is what our kids are inheriting. And I don't know if our kids are going to be able to even afford to live in a house, or if they're going to ever be able to afford to own their own home.
Right.
Right? I worry about that for my daughters.
Which even for the 20-something-year-olds coming out of college, that's one of the hugest issues is how do I make a lot of money really fast, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to survive. So there you have the rush of like influencing and making money any which way, which is a further disconnection from values, from foundation, from
and reality,
what roots us, and
right?
reality.
Because
right?
I don't think there's a yes, in wholesaling you can make $10,000, $20,000 in a shorter amount of time than you could in corporate America.
Yep.
But it requires a lot.
Right.
It requires a ton of work. It requires continuous attention, follow up, systemization. Like, it's not easy.
Which is an accrued set of skills.
Skills,
right?
Absolutely, right? It's like, and so sure, I can make it seem really easy in an ad, right? And the words that I can tell you is like, you just need to have a couple of hours a day. Some people say check. You need to be able to be really good at being self-started, check. You need to be able to learn in a way that you can apply it. Right, check, and you need to be able to understand numbers. If you can do these things, you can wholesale. And what ends up happening is, I think that in our society right now is like we find one obstacle and we stop. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, has been the biggest barrier to entry for people actually, carrying on. And so
people skills,
right? Of course,
because it is all about building relationships.
Yeah.
And if you don't have practice at it and you don't have experience of what it takes to create genuine connection, right, and have the emotional intelligence to, be aware socially and self-aware and all of that, like that's a whole other journey, right, that someone has to take to be able to maintain that, and that's a huge part of sustainability.
Absolutely. Right? And as one of the questions that when we first chatted today was, how do I get started? Mm-hmm. So you've got these ideas, you've got a goal, you know what your values are, and you know how you want those to align with what you're going to do for your strategy. Yeah. And so I wanted to dive into that because, you're learning wholesaling, you're really interested in co-living. Both of those are avenues that I'm very, very interested in or have a ton of experience in. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to break that down today, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of diving into first steps, getting started, and like really breaking into that action place, because I think it's really easy to get into a cycle of learning, a cycle of consumption, and like I want to know a little bit more before I take the step, know a little bit more before I take the step, know a little bit more before I take the step, but then that becomes creative avoidance. Yeah. Of like, I haven't taken the step yet, right? Right. And I think you coming out here was really interesting and very, very good first step for you to like push yourself and force yourself into taking action, because that's, it's hard to go into another city and like just start meeting with people and going at it. But I think you leaped into it, and where most people would be like, okay, well, if I'm not going to get on a plane and come meet somebody and like, come here, you spent an entire day with my sister. Yeah. What if I'm just at home and I want to get started, right? Yeah. And so we've talked about the relationship aspect of how I approach wholesaling and why I think it's such a great sustainable cash printing machine for other parts of the business. For instance, my wholesale business feeds my co-living business. Right? I wouldn't have the available funds to do the renovations, to acquire the properties if I didn't create the cash from my wholesale game, right? 100%. And so starting there, wholesaling is not as hard as people want to make it seem. I tried to simplify it, and
you did a great job at simplifying that.
I
That's
hope.
why I joined Astro, because it was
Awesome.
like I need step by steps. I want clear communication. I want to understand, how to do it little by little, and it's very well laid out. And the community.
Yes.
I mean, even as a like colleague or peer, watching how you run a community, because that's in my kind of model over here, but I haven't started it. It's just like, yes, like that's how you do it, and you just keep showing up, and you show up with, the content that people want, but also the conversation that people need, and the space for people to be themselves, and you're weaving in of mindset. Like that was one thing that definitely, just impressed me about you, was that you weren't afraid to go there. You weren't afraid to be yourself. You're not afraid to bring talk of spirit and God into the picture. You're not afraid to, speak to the massive impact and influence of mindset. And not a lot of people are doing that. So that was certainly, I don't know if I knew how much you were into mindset when I got in, but something drew me. So,
like attracts like, and that's a reality, I think, in everything that goes on. And so looking at the wholesale game for you and getting started, right? There's, I think you've selected your strategy. We know that relationships are key, especially if you want it to be sustainable. You want to build a business that you don't have to build every day, that you don't have to do over and over and over again, that you don't have to keep continuing to have to do the same tasks, because it's like in a transactional business model, there's the business cycle of how you make money, and then it's over. And then you've got to do it all over again. And I think in wholesaling, that's, for some people, the way they want to go about it. They get the thrill of the hunt. They really like, finding the home, finding the homeowner, tracking them down, having the conversations, convincing them, negotiating with them, following up with them, getting them to the under contract, to the closing table, and then getting the deal done. But then the entire thing has to be restarted. Whereas when you deal with a real estate agent or deal with another wholesaler or combination of both, you have the opportunity to plant seeds that can bear fruit later, right? Sure. So the real estate agent approach, which I think for you makes a lot of sense, just given your professionalism, your communication skills, and quite possibly the network that you've built in different areas. Yeah, I think you would very likely have that as a really easy way in. And I think the truth of the matter is that in wholesaling, we're really just looking for a way to be able to solve a problem for the person we're talking to. And for real estate agents, the types of homes that we deal with in wholesale are houses that they can't sell on the retail market, right? And so you bring the solution to the table. I'm here because I know that the last time you had a hoarder house or something in with a lot of deferred maintenance, maybe you looked at it and said, how am I going to get a bank to finance this? I can't sell this to a retail buyer on the MLS. What will I do with this? And that's where you could step in, right? So I specialize in those. I'm partnered with investors across the country who want to buy those. And so I want to see everything that comes across your table that looks like that. And that's essentially the conversation. And then that conversation happens over and over and over and over again. And then you follow up on those conversations. And so, creating those initial inroads into those relationships are really important. But if you're not continuing to follow up with those, then the ball will get dropped. And usually just because you're not top of mind. So in your journey here.
Short journey?
Yeah, your short journey, because I know you're just getting started.
Totally.
What have you tried so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first is getting through all of the content, which is important for me so part of what I did at my other job was learning and development. So like that, all those pieces I want to have underneath me. And of course, now I have to go back to them because there's practical application of all those things that you learned. But so a lot of it has just been because I've been waiting for A2P verification. It had been several weeks. It just got verified last week. Woo. I know, finally. Has been agent outreach, and I'm a part of a ton of moms groups in Colorado. And so I just put, hey, who's an agent? And of course, you get like hammered. And so I just started a spreadsheet, created a list. I reached out to them individually and just making personal connections and letting them know who I am, what I'm doing, and what I want to do in this space. And I even kind of allude to the fact that I want to get into co-living and I want to solve problems together and I want to do it with people who have the same values and they're into it. You know, they're like,
Amazing.
how do I help? How do we do this together? And I've already had some agents like, hey, check this out. I've got this really weird situation. Is this something that you want to try to solve?
Amazing.
And
so potential leads have already started to
like
to
5
flow.
at least
Wow.
from one
Wow.
agent, from
Wow.
only one. And
Wow.
so it's like, once you have those real conversations and they know that you're actually invested and you want to do cool work together and make change together, there's something that lights up inside of them. And that's why I say, like the relationships has been super important, especially because I couldn't connect with anyone by text or automated workflows or anything. So I haven't even gotten to that part.
Right.
And my journey right now, I've been working with Corianne in Colorado. She's been a wealth of information of just helping me get things set up and kind of looking at it different angles. And then if I have a situation, it's like, who do we connect into? What are the resources that we have? And so I learned through that. Like I just had a conversation this morning with people that I had never met before, and just like bringing in different people to solve a problem. And it's either they either accept or decline, but at least I'm a part of creating solutions, and that's what I love, right?
Yeah.
The problem solving aspect. So, and then of course coming out to see your sister and shadow her. For me, it was like you connected me with her, and we talked in the morning. Literally, the first 30 seconds, she's like, "Can you get out to Arizona?" I said yes. And that was it. Like I don't really want to waste a ton of time, and I was already going on a trip. But for me, it's like I don't want to rush it, but I also don't need to waste time and want to make so many mistakes until I get to the place where I want to be. And connecting in with those who know more than me has always been a great strategy. Every coach needs a coach,
Yep.
So
and I'm constantly learning as well. Actually, just interestingly enough, there's a strategy here that I've heard about, didn't know anything about it, buying tax deeds and tax liens and things like that. And I'd heard of it before. I used to buy wholesale properties from an investor here in Arizona who would buy tax deeds, and actually he would buy liens.
Yeah.
And he would hold those liens for a certain number of years. He would go through all the necessary processes to try to get the lien holder or try to get the homeowner to pay the lien off. Of course, the county is the one who sold him the lien, so it's the county, right? It's the county's money that he actually paid the money to the county on behalf of the homeowner. And he acquires properties that way because people just don't pay their taxes, or they don't care, or sometimes they just don't even care about the property and they just leave it. And so I would keep seeing him buying these homes. Like he would buy a home and I'd see his cost on it was like $6,000, and I'm buying it from him for like $150,000 or $200,000, and I'd ask him, "Will, how did you get this house for $6,000? Like, how? What did you do? Like, please tell me." And he'd say, "Oh, I bought the tax lien 3 years ago." And then, well, I kept trying to get them to pay and they just never paid, so I had to initiate the foreclosure. And then I foreclosed. And now he's like, "Well, I had to wait for the redemption period." I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" He's like, "Well, once I foreclose and I take possession of the house, we then do everything in our power to let them know that your house got foreclosed on, and now you have a year to unravel it." So they still they're not like out of the woods. They're like, he's like, "I waited an entire year, and if they still don't want it or want to unravel it, that's when I come to you and I sell it to you."
It's a long game.
It's a long game, right? So he does a mixture of tax liens, which can be longer, and then tax deeds. These are already homes that the county has taken possession of because of non-payment of taxes or whatnot, and so they sell you the deed. And so now you're not having to go through the redemption period and go through all that. You're just buying these houses directly from the county. And I knew nothing of this strategy. And so I had these two wizards come to my house here for a week. And they literally schooled me to the entire game of how to do this acquisition strategy. And it was just completely foreign to me. But just like you said, every coach needs a coach. And sometimes, there's got to be new and interesting strategies on how to make acquisitions and do things. And so I'm really diving into that right now. Again, knowing that it's an aggressive strategy, not trying to do it in a predatory manner, but like looking at it from, you know, the rules of the game. How do I play within the rules of the game, but still have high ethics and high morality in it as well? Knowing that, you know, if I'm getting a house on for pennies on the dollar, but if this person doesn't care or they're not even alive any longer, then that's just how it goes, you know?
And you got to get out of your head to be able to do that, right? Like you just have to move out of your own way. And, you know, I think that's the biggest thing is I could let fear be in my way. You know, Rahima could say, come into Arizona. I'd be like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. But at the end of the day, she's a human. I'm a human. I want to learn. She's got something to teach. Same with you. I want to meet you, you know, and we exchange. And it's more like, I told her the other day, she's like, what? So, you know, what is it that drew you? And I was like, I just follow the energy. Like I follow the spark, right? And the excitement and something that pulls me. And like with that agent, she was the one that said, well, let's meet in person. And you learn, don't meet people in person. She asked me for coffee. You learn, don't go have coffee with people, but I did. And because it felt inspiring to me. And it's like
it lit you up and you're like, this felt right.
So you get lit up and I just like keep following that. And that's what kind of turns into these next conversations and these next opportunities. Had I never asked that question to you, you would have never said, talk to my sister. Had I never, you know, even been willing to entertain the real estate game, I wouldn't have known you even existed. Right? So it's like that. I think that there's something for intuition and following the what lights you up, what gets you pumped, even though you might be getting no, don't do that. That's not the right way. Don't do that. Don't do that.
And speak to that, because I think as somebody who does coaching and as someone who's a high level mindset and performance coach like yourself, what do you attribute that voice to? Because I have my ideas on what I think the voice is, and what do you know from what you've learned?
For me, intuition and alignment with spirit go hand in hand. Right? Like there's some sense of, okay, like first of all, I have an alignment to my values. I know who I am and who I want to be in the world, and I'm very clear on how I want to show up and what that looks like. But then it's like this awareness not only of my internal workings, but around me, like what are the signs that are guiding me, and also my own body compass is like telling me I'm getting lit up, or this does not feel right. I feel anxious. I feel heavy. This doesn't feel good. If this didn't feel exciting, I probably wouldn't be sitting here, right? But there's some sense of alignment where you get this bigger hit and these deeper insights that's coming from something much bigger than you, right? Like my track with coaching and mentoring, that's not my choice. It is, but it's not. Like I know I'm chosen to do that in the world. And this too, like I have to wait for the bigger move and the push to say like, go here. And so that to me is spirit moving through, and then my awareness of it and how I align with it and the things that I'm listening to and even the signs that show up are, you know, like what I would call intuition and confirmation.
Right. On the other side of that, the little voice that says, scary, don't run away. What do you attribute that to?
I mean, the opposite, right? It's a lack of alignment. It's when you're off balance or you're not grounded in who you are. You're disconnected from source. You're disconnected from what's meaningful and your values. And you might be around people that are, you know, maybe not influencing you in the best way, or have habits and behaviors that are not for your best mental and physical health. And so I think those voices come when we're in, I call it like small self and big self, right? When we're in our small self and we're disconnected from source or even trust and faith, right? That there's something bigger, then those voices kind of take over.
And it usually is weaved, well, more than usually, it always feels like it's weaved in with fear, right? In some way, shape, or form, it's fear-based, and it's a confirmation that you're separate from everything and separate from your creator.
Right.
And
exactly.
And if you kind of dig it all out, it's like, that's what the core underlying reality of what this idea is that if you were supported and if you were connected to your creator, would this be something to be afraid of?
Right.
No, of course not. Okay, then move. right? And even if it doesn't go your way, does that mean it was a mistake, or was it a stepping stone to something else?
It was an opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen to me so much in my life where I've been in like, I've done something and I've tried it and then it didn't work out. And I was like, why did I waste my time? And I've even been like, God, why did I waste my time? Why did you let me waste my time? Only to find out that it was an ingredient that was necessary for the next for the next entree, but I needed to pick up this ingredient, otherwise this wouldn't have worked out.
Yeah.
And so it's so beautiful to realize and recognize that even what we may in the moment think is a misstep,
Right.
it's not. It's all God.
That's right. It's all happening for you.
Yeah.
No matter what, right? It's all happening for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think you've spoken to this before too, is like the frequency, right? You can feel when it's like a lower frequency, it kind of brings you into a state of not vibrant, right?
Sure.
It's just low and dark and all of that. But when you feel this like, ooh, yeah, I feel the connection, I feel the inspiration, I'm getting ideas, I'm getting awakened, right? To a different level, you know, that takes practice to identify.
It does, yeah.
Right? But
and also you have to be like almost the appropriate vessel for it, right?
well, you have to tune your vessel.
Yeah, because you can have a lot of blocks in your body and in the way you think, and that can kind of lead to, you know, not really understanding what's happening.
Yeah.
And that has to get worked through. And that's where I found like practices like breath work have been really beneficial for me, because it just moves out all of that. You know, and truth telling. That's another thing that I think has been, people are not, you know, even if it's not to other people, like when's the last time you sat down and wrote a list of all the lies you told this, you know, in the last year?
Right.
Just so to be honest with yourself, to say, and why? Why did I do this? Like, why? What was the purpose? Even if it was a little white lie, what did I? And if, you know, so that you can clear it, so that you can understand the motivation behind what made you say that, or what made you, what pushed you there, right? When's the last time we've looked at and made a list of all the people that we may have hurt or may have hurt us, and forgiven them or ourselves for all of that? It's like we got to clear this through our out of our system in order to become a vessel for that energy to find its way through us, right?
Yeah, and there's so many layers, you know.
Yeah.
So there's one practice that I did in my training, and we wrote a list of all teachers that you've ever had in your life. That dude on the road that's road raging, like he taught you something about yourself, right? Or the kid or the actual teacher. And then also a list of all the roles you've played. Because then you kind of actually clear what you're identifying with and what you've learned along the way. And then it was a part of basically like transcending into a next level version of yourself. And we do the ceremonial aspect of it, but it's like you let go of all those roles. You let go of all the things, you know, not letting go of the teachers, but honoring what they taught you, honoring what all those roles taught you. And then, okay, so who are you now, right? De-identify yourself from all of these things.
Like me saying, I'm not a hiker.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because I've never really been a hiker, but then I went on an accidental hike in Malibu, and I fell in the canyon and I snapped my ankle.
Oh, yeah.
And then the sun was going down, and the phone service wasn't on, and coyotes started to circle me, and I was alone, and that was scary. And so, like, I am traumatized right now.
Formulated
an idea of like, I'm not a guy who goes hiking because of that.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's sure. If I want to continue saying that to myself, then of course I will never be a guy who goes hiking.
That's right.
But if I want that to be different, then I have to tell myself a different story.
That's right.
Right. And I have to actually let that go. And so you're doing the same thing for yourself, right? You're shedding aspects of yourself or letting go aspects of yourself with respect to your previous concepts with real estate, you know, being risky, being something that wasn't an investment. It was where we live. It's not how we earn money, right?
Yeah.
And that's a paradigm shift for people, because it's like a lot of us just see this as like, okay, this is where I come home.
Right.
But like, there's so much opportunity in housing, and there's so much that you can do for society in it as well, right? So we talked about starting in wholesaling, you know, how relationships are the key in really being able to create a sustainable business in it, but leading that to the conversation of co-living, which I know is really on your heart and something that you had got an opportunity to hang out with Rahima and meet her. So what are your thoughts on that model? And what are your initial questions about how that works?
Yeah, I mean, I came with a list of questions, and she'd just fire off answers, which was just so helpful. And what else? But I mean, it's just so impressive to see it well done. And I mean, she's obviously has so many years of experience and is just like that. I mean, it's so well refined operationally that to be able to see it at that level helps me know what's possible. And just the model itself it's just solving so many problems, right?
Yeah.
It's just solving so much. And I think about a lot of the moms that I work with, and even the ones that can't make it to the retreats. Like, I don't have the childcare and I can't afford this. And it's like even just helping individuals that I know in my own community and all of the people that are searching for some sort of gateway to their next level, right? They need a place to call home, and it just feels like the right thing, let alone can be very profitable, but it can turn, the pendulum can swing pretty easily if you're not mindful about it. So that's like where I'm like, okay, how do we do this really intentional? And Rahima's doing it intentionally, of course. So I think my questions, when I see big picture, this is how it can run to a T and super refined, is how do I work backwards, right? With my kind of L&D mind, I put my learning development hat on, like what are the foundations that I need to have in place? Certainly starting off in wholesaling, but also is there something else I can do to set myself up to be successful in the co-living space while I'm doing that? Is there intersection? And just like what needs to be ready so that I can build on top of that and make sure that I could be an expert in co-living, and I could, either run my own homes or be a property manager, whatever that looks like. I can kind of see myself as like the mama going around taking care of everybody, right? So that's kind of my lingering questions go back to not the hows and the whats and how to find it and all of that, but what's the starting point for someone like me to starting in wholesaling and then wanting this big vision? Right? There's a huge gap, it feels like, for me.
So I think, wholesaling is the seed capital, right? It's what provides the opportunity for the money. But I think that it doesn't need to necessarily stop there, or it doesn't need to be the limit. Because if you're like, well, yeah, cool, but it's going to take me some time to get my deals, and even then, if I get my first deal, I make $10,000-$15,000. That's not going to get me into a co-living project.
Right.
I'm going to need $70,000 to $100,000 to get into a co-living project, and so that might mean that I'm not getting into a deal for a year and a half, and that feels a little bit far away from me. And that also feels like, what happens to the real estate market in the meantime? Do things just get more expensive, which it seems that they probably will? So then am I behind a little bit then? And you get into this spiral of that. How do you position? So I think the best way to break it down is to think about it from the perspective of, it doesn't necessarily need to be your capital and your project right out the gate, right? So what I've seen work really well, and actually Rahima does this.
She does this,
with her investors.
Right.
And so her model right now is she'll work with an investor who's got somewhere between $70,000 to $100,000 in liquid capital, so it's not a lot of money outlay. Which it is, but it's not in the grand scheme of like investments and real estate investments, right? People will invest hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars into projects, right? And so what we've found is there's a sweet spot for the property value, and there's a sweet spot for the property area, and there's a sweet spot for the kind of construction. And there's certain specific kinds of lenders that love these types of deals. So what we'll do is she'll bring an investor in who brings in the capital required for the 20% down of the acquisition of the property and 20% down for the construction financing of the home, right? And that usually equates to somewhere between $70,000 to $100,000, right? So let's just, for simplicity's sake, call it $100,000. So you go to your friends and your people that trust you, or people that and you raise private capital. So that's bringing in private money lenders, right? So your private money lender says, okay, Tiffany, I trust you, I believe in you, and I think this is a great model. I have $100,000 in my IRA or my 401k that's like barely returning anything for me right now, and it's just sitting there. And so they can untrap capital that's just sitting in these instruments that aren't really doing much, and they then purchase the property and they start the construction process, right? Yep. Now what Rahima is doing with her investors is she says, I'll find the house, I manage the property, I manage the construction, I'll do the lease up, but we're 50-50. So they bring the capital, she brings the work, and then the beautiful thing about it is that these projects typically finish, she gets them done in
8 weeks.
Yeah, like she's stupid fast, right? So, but she can get a project done and leased up in 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And so that's perfect timing for the refi, for the commercial lender who then comes in. So what they'll do then is, because we forced appreciation on the house, we buy the house wholesale.
Right.
So we're not just buying a retail house off of the MLS. If you are bringing your own wholesale properties to the table, it's even better, but you could also buy them just from wholesalers, which we do a lot as well. Even though, we're wholesalers, we'll still buy. The appetite for these projects is so great, we have to buy homes from wholesalers to keep up.
Yeah.
And so, we buy the home from the wholesaler. Let's just say it's like, a $250,000 acquisition. It's a $400,000 ARV after the renovation is done. And so we already know what the numbers are, right? We know we're acquiring at $250,000. We know that the ARV is $400,000. We know we're probably about $125,000 in construction here. And so for a fix and flip deal, that somebody would look at that and say, that's not a lot of profit margin, right?
Right.
Because after I pay the real estate agents and I, all the things, maybe I walk away with $25,000, $30,000 or, something like that. But from the co-living model, instead of selling it and paying all that money to agents and fees and all of that, what we'll do is we'll refinance the house and we pull that initial investment out. So the 70 to 100 grand it costs to buy the home and to put down for the construction financing, all that capital is now released.
Yeah.
And the investor gets their initial money back.
Right.
Right? But the beautiful thing is there's still equity in the home, because there's still that 25% that the lender left in there after the refi. So there's equity in the house, plus we've got cash flow of like $2,000 to $2,500 a month. That's in addition to what the mortgage payment is. And so the way we're looking at it is like, okay, if we can do this deal 5 times, right? If you're making $2,000 a month per house, and you do 5 of those, that's 10 grand a month. You do 20 of those or 10 of those, that's 20 grand a month. I don't know a lot of families who couldn't survive off of $20,000 a month, right?
Right.
Maybe me. But like, I can't survive off $20,000 a month. But I could. I'm pretty simple. But like 20 grand a month is incredible, right? That's an incredible amount of money. Absolutely. And that's really only 10 projects. Now, if you brought private investors in to help you do it, you do 10 deals, they take half of the money, they got all their money back. But now you've got a situation for yourself where you're making half of that $2,000 a month. So it's like you're getting $1,000 a month. And on 10 houses, that's $10,000 a month, and you have no capital in that deal whatsoever, right? So that's the model she's running right now with her investors, and her thing is she's stacking up her monthly cash flow, and she's stacking up, because she also gets to participate in that equity that's in the home once they sell the house, right? Because she's 50-50 with them in all aspects, right? Other than their initial capital return. So when the initial capital return comes out, they get all of that back, but then any upside they split 50-50. So that would be how I would recommend you do it, is finding those investors, having them come in and partner with you on those deals. Obviously you'd need the pieces like the construction and those things, which of course she's got that dialed in. And so that would be something you'd need to figure out if you were gonna do it in Colorado.
Right.
Is where do I get, making sure you had the right construction pieces, making sure you had the right properties and the right wholesalers on your team. But those aren't really that hard to do. There's a lot of good people out there. You just have to,
I feel myself tensing up right now just at the
Yeah.
thought of,
Yeah.
I don't know investors right now.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly I know flippers and people who have crews and stuff.
Well,
but I
that's
know
why
that's a
wholesaling
sensitive
is
subject.
going to be your best initial road in, because it's going to give you access to all of these different people, right? So over time, as you wholesale more, you're going to meet more and more construction people. You're going to meet more and more fix and flippers. You're going to run into more and more people in that industry, and you're going to see the ones that do a really good job, and you're going to see ones that you'd say, I wouldn't work with those folks, right? So you'll start to gain those connections. And again, as you start to gain those connections, you start to connect with those people, those will be part of your network. So many of Rahima's investors aren't family and friends. They're people that have bought wholesale properties from us in the past. So they've already won with us in the past. They already know that what we do is great work, right? They already know these guys have been, I've been buying deals off this lady or her brother for 6-7 years, right? And so they feel really comfortable being in those kinds of deals with us. And so I think right now you're planting the seeds and you're laying the framework, right? And it's not something that you need to go out and do tomorrow.
Right.
But know that if this is your final goal, if co-living's your, like, this is what I really want to do, then keep your eyes peeled to make those connections.
Yeah. Have that in mind.
Have that in mind as you're talking to folks and as you're wholesaling and making those dollars. You know, after you do 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 deals with a fix and flipper, to say, hey, would you ever be interested in partnering with me on a co-living deal? You know, instead of flipping some of these houses, I've been thinking about keeping 1 or 2 of them, and this co-living cash flow opportunity is just silly. It's so good. And then you could explain how the model works, right? So I feel like that's probably the safest and most conservative way to map out the road for yourself. Wholesale for a couple of years, get your cash right, make sure you've got access to your own liquid capital. Then you don't even need to bring in investors if you you know, in the future, but it'll put you in a position to meet dozens and dozens of people who would get into deals like that with you. And then you build your ecosystem, right? And
that takes time. That's what I have to keep reminding myself. It's like a garden. It's not going to grow overnight.
It's not going to grow overnight.
Like, take time to build relationships and understand, you know, how everybody plays their role.
And even in that, it's silly to me how fast 5 years goes, and it's even crazier to think about how fast 10 goes. Like,
let alone 22.
Yeah, it's like, I can't believe just, I mean, like, this home doesn't feel like I've lived in it for 4 years, right? But I can still remember the day I moved in. Like, it was yesterday. So time is moving really quickly. But I've changed so much in those 4 years as well. If I go look back and think about who I was in 2020 when I moved in to who I am today in 2024, I can even remember the outfit I was wearing when the day I moved into this house. And I can remember what we had for dinner the day I moved into this house. I can even remember my mindset when I moved into this house, and I'm far different of a person than I was then than I am today. So a lot of growth happens even though it's a short amount of time. So
absolutely. The question, I don't know if you want to, if this is different than what you wanted to talk about, but so what Rahima was telling me is that she has investors that are looking for these places, and she operates kind of as a property manager. So she said that, right, she'll find the place, she'll say, okay, we can turn this into a whatever, and then she takes 22% off.
On the rents, so that's a different deal. Than when she's JVing with people as well. So when she's JVing with people, she's, and that's usually like where she's doing things at cost, and she's not taking profits early.
She's using their money to fund everything. And then taking her percentage for managing everything.
Now the way that she's put it together is, instead of going that route, she's actually going to do more of a property manager sort of role and formalize it in that. Because there's of course competitors in the space for leasing up co-living. And when we looked at the overall expenses of what those actually came out to, they would charge 15% just to lease the property up. And then you were responsible for managing the property. And that's hard because the management of co-living requires a little bit more work than your average long-term rental situation, because you're now dealing with 6 people in one house instead of one tenant that you would normally have. So it's like 6 tenants, right? So it could be 6 times the work if there's things going on and you've got, you know, people asking questions and all the things. And so, but at what she's created for a cost, like 22% property management all in from lease up, I think it actually makes a ton of sense. And it works out better for the investors because in those deals, then she's not 50-50. The investor gets to retain their equity. They get to keep their cash flow minus their, you know, the 22% property management fee. So I think that worked out better for her on volume, so that investors could keep more of their money and it just be their deal all the way through and through. And that's an example for you for structure later on if you decide to do this for people in your state.
Start to get creative with what works for my time and energy. But there's lots of options, right? So you kind of have an idea of you know, where to start, how to go, what the inroads should be, what that kind of timeline is going to be. And as you get more confidence, as you do more deals, you'll start to really put these pieces together. And I feel like you'll probably get into your first co-living property way faster than you think you're going to do it. I have a hunch, but you know, it's really not that difficult. It's just it's like you don't know what you don't know, right? And you don't know how hard it could be or maybe how easy it is, you know, given that it's all about relationships and connecting with people. And who knows, it might just all drop in and all the puzzle pieces will fit together. But, you know, for me, it's like, just listening to the bigger thing that's trying to come through me and making sure I stay aligned with it and having, you know, the right education, the right mentors to support this new path. So I really appreciate your guidance and you.
Thanks for coming out to Arizona.
Golden Brick Road.
Of course, your old stomping ground.
I know. Yeah, for a little bit at least.
How do people get a hold of you if they're interested in performance coaching or joining you in the Swiss Alps on your
yes, I'm
hike
so
next
excited
year?
about that. Well, I'm on Instagram as Tiffany Grimm Fulton, and then TiffanyGrimmFulton.com is my website. So,
awesome, guys. Go check out her website, order her book. I'll put a link to her book in the description over here.
Thank you.
And you guys should order it. I got a free copy. But it was a great book, great read, really quick exercises that you could do to create some calmness, to like downregulate your nervous system and really just reframe. If you're going through something in the middle of the day and you're like, man, I just can't shake this thing off, you kind of pick up that book. There's little exercises. There's a whole bunch of exercises in there, but you can pick one that resonates with you, do it, see how you feel. I recommend it. And also, maybe if you do reach out there and you end up going to the trip in the Swiss Alps, I might be there, I might not. I don't know. Mountains try to kill me, so we'll see. Also, do me a favor, guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and like this video and leave Tiffany a comment in the comment section. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. Thank you.